In this video, I will give a brief description for the palatal finger spring. Then I will demonstrate the procedure for fabrication of this spring. First, the indications for using palatal finger spring. It's mainly indicated for moving anterior teeth in a mesodistal direction, but teeth should be located along the line of the arch in correct labiolingual direction. Otherwise, this spring cannot be used. So if there is a median diastema between two maxillary central incisors, we can use finger spring to move the central in a mesial direction. Description of palatal finger spring. It consists of 4 parts: the active arm, a coil or helix, a retentive arm, and the tag. It's mainly constructed in 0.5 millimeter and sometimes may be constructed in 0.6 millimeter, especially when it is used for posterior teeth. The active arm, the first part, is about 12 to 15 millimeter in length. This is the active arm. It starts with a small loop adapted to the labial surface of the central. Then there is a helix, about 3 millimeters internal diameter or 4 millimeter external diameter. The active arm is below the coil, so the active arm is close to the palatal tissue. Always the coil should be constructed in the opposite direction to the intended tooth movement. So if we need to move the tooth in a mesial direction, the coil should point in a distal direction. The coil is incorporated to increase the flexibility of the wire and allow the application of lighter forces. Then there is a retentive arm, about 3 or 4 to 5 millimeters in length. At this point, the wire will enter the ecleric base, so it will end in a zigzag retentive tag. Fabrication of palatal finger spring. We will assume that we need to move the right maxillary central incisor to the mesial along the line of occlusion, if there is midline diastema, for example. So we need to construct a palatal finger spring that contacting the distal surface of maxillary central incisor. This is the loop or the end of the retentive arm. This is the loop or the end of the active arm. Then we will draw the long axis of central incisor. The coil should be located near the long axis at 15 millimeter distance from incisal edge. So this will be the position of the helix or coil, about 3 millimeter internal diameter. Then we have a short retentive tag. It should be kept away from the palatal midline. We will start by taking 6 centimeter of 0.5 millimeter hard stainless steel wire and straightening this piece of wire. After it becomes straight, I will make a small loop at the very end of the wire. Then I will make it smaller by squeezing it between the two beaks of the plier. To make it as small as possible. This loop is necessary to prevent any trauma to the lip from the spring. Then I will make a small bend about 2 millimeters away from the loop to adapt it to the tooth surface. So this is a small bend. Then I check it on the tooth surface to make sure that it is adapted. Then I will mark the area where it crosses the occlusal surface to make another bend. Just on the side of the mark, make sure at the correct I will increase the bend. I will increase the bend a little bit more. Then I will do this movement. I hold the part that I have constructed between the two beaks firmly. Then I will make an outward bend, slight outward bend of the wire. So now it's perfectly adapted to the tooth. Now I should mark the position of the coil. As mentioned before, about 15 millimeter from the incisal edge, exactly where the drawing is made. So this is the position of the coil. We check it again. It is correct. It is important to hold the wire, in the correct orientation at the mark. The end of the active arm should face one direction, while the coil will be constructed in the opposite direction to the end of the active arm. I will make the coil slightly below the tip of the round beak to make sure it will end up with a diameter of 3 millimeter. So I will start making the coil. Another important point, the coil should be above the active arm. So I move it above the active arm while I'm moving around. So this is the coil. It should be compact. The two sides are compact. We should check the dimension. As you can see, it's 3 millimeter in internal diameter and 4 millimeter in external diameter. I need to increase the turning of the wire around the coil. Then I will make this bend. This will ensure that the retentive tag will be away from the mid-palatal line. Now I check it again on the cast to make sure it's in the correct position. Now I start making the retentive tag.
by making small acute bends, 2 or 3, not more, 2 or 3 acute bends in the same plane. Then I will cut the excess wire. After cutting the excess wire, I will check it again on the cast for adaptation. As you can see, the active arm needs to be adapted on the pallet. I will adapt it by making small round bends along the active arm. As you can see now, it is adapted, well adapted to the palatal surface. It's important to make sure that the retentive arm does not cross the palatal midline. Make any necessary adjustment. And the most important thing, you should make sure that the tag or the retentive arm is away from the palatal midline. The coil is on the opposite direction of the intended tooth movement. The active arm is close to the palate, below the coil.